Good evening, and it's good to be back with episode 500 of F5 Live, Refreshing Technology. For July 1st, 2018, this show is a proud part of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. This week, Apple and Samsung finally settle their differences, regulations could be strangling the internet, and Fox is officially ghosting Comcast. Wherever you are and however you're accessing our show, whether it be on any of our live stream partners, which are livestream.com, Mixer, Periscope, Twitch, YouTube Live, and Facebook, on any of these social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you happen to be, or on any of the podcatchers, including Apple Podcasts, the all-new Google Podcasts, which they finally got rid of that terrible name, the Podcast Play app on Windows 10, or any of the other myriad of podcatchers, or wherever you're accessing us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. This here, like I said, is F5 Live, Refreshing Technology, the flagship show on the PLUGHITZ Live family of content. We are live most Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, and we go for about an hour, and we will talk the gadgets, gaming, internet, and media news of the week. There are two ways that you can join us. The first is live on those Sunday nights at 9 p.m. by going to f5live.tv/join us. There you will see the chat room and the live stream, and you can join along right there. If you can't join us live and chat with us in the chat room, that is okay. You can always subscribe by going to plughitzlive.com/subscribe, and there you will see F5 Live, as well as the Pilch Point, which will be in just a little while. We'll be talking about Avram's experience with Linux over the last couple of days. And our First Look series, our special events, and a number of other series there as well. So you can subscribe to all of that. And I think with that, that is the spiel. Avram, it has been way too long. How have you been?
Oh, good. A lot of stuff. Have we spoken since I got back from Computex? I'm not sure. Did we have a show since then?
We have not had a show since then. You and I have spoken, but we have not had a show since then.
Wow. Okay. Well,
right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Wow, it has been a very long time. Well, it was an exciting month of June. For me, we had a great show at Computex. Lots of neat stuff came out of that. Lots of great new products. We've brought on 2 new staff members for Tom's Hardware, where I'm the editor-in-chief, and we continue, and things kind of continue to chug along. And right now, as I will talk about later, I am in the middle of a Windependence project where I am using Linux instead of Windows on my main computer, and I'll tell everybody how that's going.
So, since we haven't spoken since Computex, give us a couple of the quick highlights.
So, let's see. ASUS announced a couple of big things. Their ROG phone, which is yet another game, which is maybe the second gaming phone that we've really seen after the Razer phone.
Sure.
ASUS also announced I won't call it a dual screen laptop. Well, actually they did. They had both project, what's it called? They showed a prototype of something where the keyboard was a screen, so that, and then they also have coming out soon a ZenBook Pro that has the touchpad as a touch screen. So obviously, the desire for secondary screen is out there. AMD announced a new 32-core CPU, the Threadripper 2, and Intel came out with its 8086K, the 40th anniversary CPU, which we have for review up on Tom's Hardware right now. And also, we caught Intel uh, doing something a little bit misleading in their keynote. Paul Alcorn, who's our CPU's editor, noticed that they were showing off, I think it was a 28 core processor demo where each of the cores was able to hit 5 gigahertz. If you know anything about processor speeds and clocking, you know how difficult that is. He noticed that while on the stage they had a liquid nitrogen cooling box that everything was going through. They forgot to mention that this demo was using all kinds of extra cooling and overclocking. It wasn't these things running at stock speeds with the stock cooler.
Got it.
So, so that, you can decide whether they had an obligation to tell people that when they made this demo in front of, however many thousands of people that, it actually was an overclock with like really specialized cooling.
Sure.
Or not, but
Okay, well, that's an interesting situation. I'm curious about the laptop with the trackpad touchscreen, because I've seen some stuff on it, and I'm curious your take on it.
It looks pretty. It's not the first time we've seen something like this. So you may remember I think it was the Razer Blade Pro like 4 years ago, had something like this, Switchblade, I think it was called.
Oh, I think you're right.
So the touchpad, you turn it off and just save the battery.
Okay.
Because it definitely affects battery life.
Sure.
You can use it. It has like a quick launch menu on it that you can use. You can turn it into a calculator. There's a bunch of different little apps you can use for it, like a calculator one and one that makes it a numeric keypad and other things like that. And then if you really want to, you can use it as an actual second monitor and like put a YouTube video on there, which is very weird.
I can see playing a video game walkthrough on the bottom screen while you're playing a game on the top screen.
Yeah, it doesn't really work as a touchpad when you're doing that, though. So you better attach a mouse if you're going to do that.
Sure.
But plus, it's really weird how you move your pointer and it's like this tiny, teeny, tiny pointer rolling around on the second, the second screen that's maybe 4 inches or something like that, 4 or 5 inches. So
like having a Bluetooth mouse connected to a Windows 10 phone and having the teeny tiny mouse scroll around on the screen. Yeah. So that kind of a thing. But it's neat. Whether or not it will work is another thing. And then there was project. I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of it, but look it up. It's on Tom's Hardware. The dual screen ASUS monitor, where it also is supposed to use AI, although the way in which it uses AI seems like kind of a stretch of the term AI. Like it knows based on what app you're using, what type of virtual keyboard to show and things like that. Okay.
I wouldn't exactly call that super duper artificial intelligence, or it knows, it does auto predictions or things like that. So,
sure.
I wouldn't exactly call it, from what they discussed, super intelligence. But, I think there is a future for, for products that have no physical keyboard. I personally don't want to use one, but there's a future for it. I would rather, to have a dual screen effect, I would rather have something where there is an actual second screen that like pops out of the side of the notebook lid. There obviously there have been, a few attempts at that, and there have been a few attempts at aftermarket products. There's one right now, I'm forgetting the name of it, that recently launched on Kickstarter, where it's a magnet and you attach it to the back of your notebook lid, and it can pop a 12-inch screen out of the side. So like that kind of thing, I think I would consider. But I wouldn't
There's
I just like typing.
sure,
For real.
sure. There's also Project Valerie from Razer.
Yes.
That had
Yes.
three
So
screens.
yes, we'll see if that ever comes out. But right,
Yeah.
that's what I want. Like I want something like that.
Yeah. That's way more
and
practical.
I want something like that. But what they're thinking of is not really, hey, I'm going to use this as like a dual screen for dual productivity necessarily, but that hey, you can lay it flat and turn it into like an air hockey game or something,
Uh-huh.
or battleship or something. You can, have all kinds of adaptive keyboards or be able to draw on it. Like, that's what they're thinking. They're not really thinking of it the way that like I have two monitors set up on my desk right now.
Right. Yeah. Or, the ridiculous setup that's going on in here. Yeah, that's not what they're thinking. They're thinking more like the canceled Microsoft Courier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Excellent. And as you said, you guys have content from Computex on a laptop. Or where are you working now? Tom'sHardware.com.
Well, Laptop Mag has it too, but has a lot too. We were all there together.
Sure.
We helped each other, Sheree Smith and myself. But so yes, we've got a lot of Computex stories. We've got like 95 Computex stories. The ones I will point out that you should most look for are the coolest stuff from Computex, the coolest stuff we saw at Computex, the best of Computex, and the weirdest the coolest case mods of Computex, of which there were a lot of case mods. That was a real highlight of the show for me, was seeing all the really neat case mods, and I actually got to meet some of the world champion modders that were there, which was a privilege. So
Oh, that's awesome.
that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool situation. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I obviously I followed along during the week because I'm always fascinated by the stuff at Computex, and I know you and I talk about it all the time. I'm gonna go with you one of these years.
It would be very cool. This is like the 9th year I went, and it was the most fun that I've had at it. I feel bad for the show though, because it was very, very quiet. I mean there was lots of great announcements from a news perspective. I just mean there weren't a lot of people. It wasn't very crowded, which was great for me, but I don't know what that says about the future of the show. They had it a week later than they normally do, so maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know.
Okay.
But it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of really neat stuff, and of course, representing Tom's Hardware there was really great. And I got to meet with a lot of really interesting vendors who, when I was representing Laptop, I wasn't talking to as much. So
Sure. Because obviously the priorities have changed with the brand change. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, I would not, for example, have visited with Leanne Lee, the company that makes cases, last year, and I got to visit with them, and they showed me one of the coolest things I've seen. Although apparently there have been versions of it before, so it's not the first ever. But I had not checked this out before. They have desks. They now make desks where the desk is a case.
Oh, okay.
In fact, my like banner picture on Facebook is me sitting at it. So they have like under the top of the desk is glass, and underneath you can see like your computers. The big one actually stores two separate systems inside.
Oh.
Like one on the left and one on the right. So you can have like a streaming system and your gaming system or something. And it's hydraulic standing desk too, so you could stand at it or whatever. So like, that's really cool.
That could be fun in here, seeing the production hardware that runs everything through the desk, or it could be obnoxious. But that is cool. I was wondering what that picture was. I'm looking at it right now. I was wondering what that picture was. It makes way more sense now.
Yeah, it is a computer case desk.
Okay.
So That, I mean, of course, everything is RGB now. Everything.
Yeah,
Every single product comes with some kind of customizable lighting.
sure.
In fact, Lian Li came out with a power cable, a like internal power cable that is RGB customizable. So like
Sure.
there's almost nothing left that is not. On our homepage right now at Tom's Hardware, my our new senior editor Sharon Harding did a listicle of the 22 wildest things with RGB on them, and
Nice.
you can only imagine, from the toilets to the clothing. Everything's going RGB. Next week I'm gonna come back and my face is gonna be RGB.
Oh, no. No, thank you. All right. Well, thank you for that, Avram. Let's get into some news. How does that sound? Hopefully I don't blow
Great.
the audience out of the water with the music this time. We'll see.
All right.
This week's Nifty Gifties on F5 Live is proudly powered by the Microsoft Store. Whether you're looking for the upgraded version of the Surface Book in front of me, or you're looking for a Surface laptop, or to save $360 on a Surface Pro, or you're not looking for a computer. Maybe you're looking for an Xbox One X that currently comes with an extra game, or you're looking to purchase the Cortana speaker, the Harman Kardon Invoke, or something non-Microsoft, the Samsung Galaxy S9. All of that and more are available by going to f5live.tv/Microsoft. All right, I definitely fixed the volume on that. I apologize to our live listeners who got hit by that the first time. All right, so this is pretty good news, a topic that we have been talking about for many years. The Apple-Samsung patent case, of which we actually have a custom graphic in our system, so that's how many times we've had to talk about this topic. It is finally over. Apple and Samsung have ended the long-running patent infringement case that has been going on since 2011. So a 7-year patent case that has gone almost as high as it can go. And Samsung has seemingly lost every time. It is over. They have told the court we've come to a settlement, and they can't refile in the future. So it is officially done. Hooray! For those who don't know the details on this, this is the one that we have joked about time and again, that Apple had sued Samsung because their phones had rounded corners. That's not the only thing, but it was certainly the most ridiculous of the claims, because obviously there had been rounded corners long before the iPhone. But so it's done. I think this is important for a couple of reasons. One, thank God this will be the last time we have to talk about it. But more importantly, how much money from both of these companies has been squandered on this patent infringement case?
It really shows that some companies just have way too much money to, like, I mean, it's so frustrating to hear about this. I mean, what's interesting though is, as far as I know, they haven't sued any other Android phone maker.
Right.
Have they not sued HTC? How about Motorola? How about Sony? How about like anybody who's made the phone?
Uh-huh.
I mean, a lot of them have rounded corners.
Absolutely.
Or have a piece of glass in the front, or have a touchscreen, or like. So I don't know. I feel like
And
this is
and part of the patent infringement case came down to the operation of the device, which is Google, not Samsung. You know.
yeah.
But,
So
but
like,
Google's never been named in one of these.
yeah, I don't get it. Although, didn't Steve Jobs once say that Android was a stolen product?
Which, if you go back a couple of years before that, would have been a compliment from him. Because that would have meant that Google were great artists.
Yes. This, every time we have this conversation about this thing, I say the same thing. I think Mark Cuban said this somewhere. There should not be software patents. Software patents should not be allowed. There's a really good argument that maybe most patents are hurting innovation rather than helping it. I mean, if you can patent something as simple as, the ability, how many times you have to click to buy something, which Amazon patented, or patent the idea of rounded corners or touching icons on a screen, things that are just ideas that are just so commonplace that any person could have come up with them or independently, then you're giving people basically a license to control the market for what?
Which is exactly what this case was actually about. You know what I mean? It had nothing to do with rounded corners or touchable icons. Obviously, from a logical standpoint, you and I both know it had nothing to do with rounded corners and touchable icons. It had everything to do with which of these companies was going to have a greater control over a very lucrative industry at the time, which today it's not the lucrative industry that it was in 2011 when the suit was filed. Everything has
maybe that's why they're settling.
I think so. Hardware in the phone space is basically commoditized now. People are pretty well on the platform of their choice.
But here's the interesting thing. In 2011, there was actually a lot of competition.
Yeah. You had, you had all kinds of weird stuff. You had Sailfish and Jola and all kinds of crazy stuff out there.
Not only that, but you had more competition in the Android space.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I mean, a lot of the competitors are still around, but it's pretty clear at this point that Samsung and Apple are the behemoths in the space. Motorola is not a huge, at least in the U.S. market. Worldwide, I think Samsung has a pretty big presence. I mean, obviously, there's some brands that do better in China,
sure,
or only available in China, whatever, like ZTE. But
Huawei.
There's Huawei, but there's, it's pretty clear that Samsung is the world leader, and and in 2011. It wasn't clear that Samsung was going to emerge the winner. It could have been HTC.
I would say because I'm pretty sure
Motorola.
HTC was giving Samsung a run for their money at that point. They
were. HTC was. Motorola was.
You had HTC with the boom sound and paired up with Beats to put Beats audio in their phones, and there was some creative stuff going on in 2011, and this might have been Apple saying, we see Samsung as the threat, and let's try and neutralize that now, and never actually succeeding in it.
Well, yeah, except, for what it's worth, they cost Samsung hundreds of millions of dollars.
Just in legal fees, not to mention whatever Samsung had to pay, because the details of the agreement aren't public, but the last time Samsung lost the case, it was $300+ million, which they wanted to pay in pennies, which I thought was pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
But
Great.
The good news is it's over. I'm totally with you. I think with the patent conversation, we have the conversation with our clients all the time. By the time you actually finish patenting something, it's probably not relevant anymore anyway. and all you've done is told people, here's an idea. All you have to do is figure out how to do it a slightly different way that doesn't violate the patent. And you've spent all your time patenting and not actually doing anything. Build the next great thing in that time.
But there's also just a lot of things, looking at it from a small business perspective, there's just a lot of things that companies want to basically set up a protection racket with. So like it didn't go over, but remember, I think it was British Telecom that claimed they had a patent on the idea of linking for a while. So like that would have meant that the whole internet would have to end. Basically the whole World Wide Web would have to end, because they would go around turning hyperlinking into protection racket.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the concept of linking is an idea as old as communication.
Right.
So
it's
the fact that they could patent it is terrible.
Yeah.
Like,
the patent office.
If I tell you to go to the store because it's a nice place to go, isn't that a link?
Yeah. The patent office certainly did not understand computers when a lot of patents were approved. Like you said, the one-click checkout thing that Amazon had was obviously a silly patent, and that's probably the biggest problem, is that nobody in the patent office understands the things that are being patented. Nobody can know that much, and to go, yeah, hasn't that, linking, isn't that the superscript in a book that leads to the footer on a page? Isn't I don't think you can patent that. That sounds insane. So
right.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. There's too much judgment there, too much power being given to the government to pick winners and losers in business.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I'm totally with you on it. So, but this one is done. Hooray. Hopefully we won't have to have any further interaction on this. We might follow up, not on the show, but in writing if we ever hear what the details of the settlement are. But I think that puts an end to a very old story. Hooray. This week's Pilch Point with Avram Pilch is proudly powered by Monster Products. The headphones on my head right now, the Monster Elements, yes, they've changed colors, are available in full over-the-ear, on-ear, in-ear, in the true wireless style. And if the Elements aren't your style, maybe the DNA Pros, or maybe the iSports, which are designed specifically for while you're working out. Maybe that's more your style. All of that is available, plus, of course, speakers from the tiny Hotshot and the S100 up to the giant Monster Blaster, and of course, all of the cables and power to connect these and your other devices are all available by going to pilchpoint.live/monster. So, we haven't had a show in a while, and so we wanted to come back with a fascinating topic of Avram running a personal experiment.
Yes. So at work we were talking, we said we wanted to do something for Independence Day, like declare independence from something. So I said, look, I will declare independence from Windows I originally said a day, but that's not enough. So I've been doing it for like 5 days now, with a little bit of a break in the middle, for a few hours. I am using Linux as my operating system. Now, I want to say that this is not the first time I've ever used Linux.
Sure.
Every couple of years I do something like this, although usually not for several days, but every couple of years I give desktop Linux a try. And this is going way back to like the late 90s. I actually had 2 PCs on my desk at home, and one of them was running Red Hat and one of them was running Windows. So, I I go back to Linux every few years to see, hey, like how is this coming? But then inevitably I get drawn back into Windows because the programs I want to use are in Windows,
Mm-hmm.
and the interface is just nicer in Windows for me. Um, so, but I said, hey, I will give this a shot again, and it's been an interesting experience. It makes me have kind of much more respect for where Linux is today, and makes me kind of want to use it more. Um, but it's also been a great challenge. So I install after asking the community at Tom's Hardware what apps and flavor of Linux to try. I got a bunch of different answers, and I decided to go with Linux Mint.
Okay.
Linux Mint is a very popular flavor of Linux. Those who aren't Linux people may not know that there's like a lot of flavors of Linux. It's not like Windows and Mac OS where it's like, hey, I can just choose Windows 10 or a Home or Pro, and it's pretty much the same thing. Or Mac OS, that's it.
Right.
There's a lot of different flavors of Linux. They're pretty much all free, but they give you a different interface, slightly different look and feel, different compatibility with apps. So it can be a little confusing. You want a popular one. Ubuntu by far is the most popular Linux, but I didn't want to do just what everybody else does. So I went with Mint, which is supposed to be based on Ubuntu, but a little nicer. So I installed it, and installing was easy. Only took a few minutes. The main challenge that I had, and I think this was something where I made a mistake, is I could not get my laptop that I put this on which is my main computer, I should say, my main home computer, which I also took to work and used for work. I could not get it to boot off of I had to download and create a boot USB, and it would not boot off of my USB in its normal mode, so I put it to legacy boot mode. Well, if you know anything about boot modes, you know that there's UEFI mode, which is the modern booting mode, and then there's legacy mode. And I thought I had to have it in legacy mode to boot off of this disk, but to boot off this USB flash drive, perhaps. But I think there might have been another way to make a USB flash drive that was bootable, that was UEFI bootable, because having installed, I wanted this to dual boot with Windows, and because I installed this legacy boot, apparently the boot manager called Grub, that's what it's called, cannot see my Windows partition. So even though it gives me a choice to boot into Windows, it thinks like I have Windows 8 when I have Windows 10 or whatever, it won't do it. So if I want to get back to Windows 10, I have to go into my BIOS, change the boot mode back to UEFI, and then it will boot to Windows and not allow me to boot to Linux. That's very annoying. The solution to that would be, unfortunately, there's no fix for it unless I completely reinstall Linux again with all the apps that I have on it, and all the settings changes and everything like that. So I'm not doing that right now. But let me show you something and see if this works. So I'm going to share my screen and see if that see if it works. All right. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, including you.
Okay, that must be like an ultimate infinite whatever. So what is weird though, I don't know if you can see this. Hold on. Is if I open anything on here, what is weird is, do you see the ghosting here?
Yes.
Or okay. Like that. So one of the big performance issues that I've had, and it's been a little bit pokey, is that that I use a docking station, a DisplayLink USB docking station, both at home and at work. And when I'm plugged into the docking station, I get this kind of ghosting. If I'm just using it on the laptop screen, I don't have a problem. But if I'm docked, which I like to do when I'm at my desk, so I can use the big screens and dual monitors, it gives me problems like that. Now, that might be DisplayLink's fault for not having a good enough Linux driver.
Sure.
It might be because my computer is a little on the old side, but it has not been, not been what I would have wanted. So
Sure.
Anyway, the other thing that I find weird are the fonts on here. So if you look at like this terminal window I have here, the spacing between the fonts is really weird. This is like one word, but it's got all these like extra blank spaces. And it was hard for me to find a theme and fonts that looked as good as Windows. It still doesn't. Like a lot of the stuff here, like the icon patterns and all of that, it looks to me a lot like Windows 98 or Windows 2000. Like they just haven't, for all the people working on Linux, and Mint is supposed to be the most modern one, and the desktop manager called Cinnamon is supposed to be one of the best looking ones, really just does not look very much. So like here's the start menu, right? And it's like, okay, but all the icons are very flat. Everything looks very like early 2000s, late 90s in this design. Now, does it really matter for your work? Probably not. But is it distracting to me that like the fonts don't look as nice as Windows? Yeah, that kind of is a distraction for me. I've been able to, obviously a lot of the software that I want to run does not run under Linux, but I was surprised at how much does. So Chrome obviously runs under Linux. Skype, there's a native Skype app, which I'm using talking to you right now. We use a chat client at work called Stride. That works. That has a native Linux client. So does Slack. So does Zoom, which is a conferencing. So like every conferencing software I've tried, basically, or chatting software, has a native Linux version. I was able to get Dropbox for syncing files. That exists. What doesn't exist? Photoshop. There's no Adobe stuff. So I had to download a different graphics software. There's GIMP, but I find the interface a little bit distracting. And then there's this one called Pinta, which looks a lot like Paint.net for Windows, which is more Photoshop-like.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Which I found. Then, of course, a good text editor for coding, because I do a fair amount of coding. Obviously, you're not going to get something like Visual Studio here. So I don't know how or if it's possible to program Windows apps on this. But there is Geany, which was recommended, which seems to be a decent. I really like Notepad++ on Windows is like one of my favorite apps, and this is, looks quite a bit like it. I found a bunch of things that run under this to where I can use it, and use it fairly effectively. Although connected to the docks as it is pretty slow. Although lately my computer has been really slow in general when docked. I think this may have to do with the Spectre meltdown patches, and that's one reason why I ordered a new computer.
Right.
Which I'm supposed to get the new one of soon, but that's another story. Anyway, so overall, I would say Linux is there if you folks want to try it out. The question is why you would need it or want it, and I think the main reason you would need it or want it is if you're just either morally opposed to Windows, you don't want to have all that data collection, you don't want Microsoft controlling your computer, or you've built a computer or have an old computer and you don't want to pay to get a new Windows.
Sure.
And that's a significant amount of money that you're paying. To buy a legit Windows license is anywhere between $90 and $120. So on the other hand, though, if you want to take full advantage of the performance of your computer, let's say you built it for gaming, well, there are some games that run under Linux, but many do not. So you know, most of the most popular titles do not. So
within the Steam catalog, for example, it's 11%.
yes. So you know, I was surprised to learn, because I hadn't been keeping up with it, that there actually were 11% of Steam catalog that run. So there's that, right? But there's 89% that don't. So, and a lot of very popular ones that you would want to play.
Sure.
And obviously, I haven't researched this, but I don't think that you're getting the maximum performance out of your NVIDIA graphics card or your AMD graphics card with the Linux drivers.
Fair enough.
So, that's my experience with Linux. Kind of mixed.
Sure.
And certainly some challenges along the way that I'll get into when I write an article about this tomorrow or the next day. I had to go to command prompt a number of times. You probably don't want to have to do that unless you really enjoy that kind of challenge.
Sure. That absolutely makes sense. So from a I'll let you switch back to your camera. So from a software standpoint, I'll switch back to myself as well. From a software standpoint, a couple of great Visual Studio Code is available for Linux. You still can't build Windows apps on it, but I mean, you could probably do the software, but you can't compile. And for graphics work, it's not Photoshop, but I really like Inkscape, and Inkscape is available for Linux.
Yeah, I tried Inkscape. It seemed more like I looked into Inkscape. I will actually download it. I looked into it. It seemed to be more made for drawing and less for doing the really basic stuff that I need to do, like crop.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not for that. It's all of our graphics for the show and stuff like that are all done in Inkscape. Because sometimes I need to make an icon 32 by 32 pixels to get it in your browser tab, and sometimes I need to put it on an HD screen. So it's all vector based. But that's another great free, depending on what you're trying to do. That's another great free thing for Linux for anybody who might be trying the same experiment that you're going through.
It's fun. It's a challenge, but I guess the bottom line is, if you bought a computer that comes with Windows, like most fully built computers do, there's not a great incentive to switch. I guess the main reason I would recommend it to people is to save money, or if they're just really like to try something different. Sure,
that makes sense. Well, obviously it's an interesting thing. I have gone through the same experiment that you're going through a couple of times, just because obviously at this point there's a 0% way for me to give up Windows entirely, especially considering I'm sitting in a room surrounded by 5 of them right now. But yeah, from time to time I run that same experiment, and sometimes I run the other experiment of trying to use Mac OS. That one usually lasts less time than trying to use Linux, just because it's so bizarrely different.
But you also have to use different hardware for that.
Yeah.
So
which makes it a bigger challenge.
I was using my same laptop that I always use, so I didn't have to get used to the keyboard or anything like that. It's what I'm used to.
Yeah, because I'm just like you. I'm picky with a keyboard, and I've yet to find Mac hardware that has a keyboard that types like you would expect a keyboard to type. Anyway, you're going to write about your experiences, and we'll be able to find them
on tomshardware.com on Tuesday.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to reading the full article, and it was definitely fun to hear you having similar experiences to every time I've run the same experiment myself. So thank you for that. And
is my screen stopped sharing now, by the way? I can't even tell.
Sure. we're back to you. Yeah, we're back to you. All right. Well, Thank you for that, and we'll actually get to talk to you again next week.
Yeah.
This week's Extra Life on F5 Live is proudly powered by Razer. Get all of the gaming accessories you need to up your game from Razer, whether it be a new keyboard and or mouse, one of the giant gamer mouse pads, or you're looking for gaming headsets like the Razer Kraken, which is on sale right now for $79 instead of $99. Or the Razer Mamba Tournament Mouse, which is $79 instead of $89. Or you're interested in the Razer phone. All of that is available by going to f5live.tv/Razer. A topic that we've talked about a couple of times that is annoying to all gamers is the fact, well, not necessarily to all gamers, but specifically to gamers on PlayStation, is the lack of console crossplay. Now, over the last year or so, we have seen both Microsoft and Nintendo embrace the idea of crossplay. In fact, we've seen them embrace it so much that since E3, which I know we never covered, but it's okay. Everybody else did. You're fine. Since E3, we've seen Microsoft and Nintendo launch co-branded TV commercials talking about how you can cross-play the same game, Xbox versus Nintendo. And, of course, the PC is in there as well. If you're talking Minecraft, you can play with people on Android and iOS and Xbox and PC and Switch and
Linux
and everything but the PlayStation. And that has been consistently because of Sony. Sony has seemed to have no interest in participating in this new gaming world order that has sprung up to gamers' delight. Everybody seems happy about this but Sony. And another example of this is Fallout 77, the new game from Bethesda that gamers have mixed opinions on it. We won't be talking about that. What we will talk about is the fact that the game 76, sorry, not 77. I don't know where my brain is. The director of the game has said that they designed the game for crossplay and were not allowed to implement it because of Sony, which is a story we have heard time and again. A couple of weeks ago, I don't remember which game it was, but a couple of months ago, Avram and I talked about another game that said they had even tested it successfully until Sony found out that they had tested it and they had to shut it down. And they said we could literally have the feature rolled out to gamers worldwide within a matter of hours if Sony said we could do it. It sounds like this is probably the same way, but Sony is in the way. However, for the first time ever, an executive at Sony has said that a solution is coming. Now, what does a solution is coming mean? Because we have games that have successfully tested the feature. Who knows? It's the world's most vague statement ever. That literally doesn't mean anything. So, who knows? Do they have some agreement with their developers that say they can't do it and they're trying to rewrite the agreement? I don't know. But maybe Sony is actually interested in fixing this. What do you think?
here's the question I don't know the answer to, and I should.
Sure.
If Microsoft makes the Minecraft game that is available on PlayStation 3 and 4 and whatever, they make the PlayStation version of the Minecraft game. Why can't it just connect to the Minecraft server?
Because just like on Xbox, everything runs through the PlayStation Network. Just like on Xbox, everything runs through Xbox Live. And so
it has to?
Yes. 100% required. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I mean, I we have a PlayStation, actually, my son and I, and like we we haven't done a lot of, like, he's young, so we don't want to like go on play things with strangers, but like, yeah, it looks like everything, it connects to the PlayStation Network a lot, but I didn't realize that like there was no way for a developer to design a game that could connect to any other server.
It can connect to another server, but it does so through, basically think of PSN at like a VPN on the thing. Everything tunnels through PSN. So that gives Sony the ability to step on anything. Now, interestingly, Sony's rules on what are PSN and what are not are theoretically less stringent than Microsoft's, but obviously in reality that's not how it's playing out, because clearly they're pretty intense about what they are and are not allowing, because Microsoft's like, we love the idea, we're letting everybody play. But Microsoft requires certain like matchmaking and stuff to all go through the Xbox Live AI matchmaking systems and stuff like that, whereas Sony doesn't care. They're like, you want to do your own matchmaking and make it suck, you do you.
I mean, obviously, Microsoft is, has a big stake in people being able to play its games. I mean, Microsoft is a big producer of games.
True.
So crossplay is meaningful to them. Although, this is interesting. I don't know the answers, but how many Microsoft-owned games are available to play on PlayStation? I mean, Minecraft is the only one I can think of.
It's the only one I can come up with offhand, but that doesn't mean... Let's see if there's any others. There's a thread on GameSpot talking about it. I don't see it actually. Possibly Ninja Gaiden. I don't know if they own that or not. It doesn't sound right.
Well, anyway, they have an interest in getting people to crossplay. Certainly, I don't see why either company would be opposed to working with Nintendo, because Nintendo, while a competitor, is also somewhat offering a somewhat different experience with the Switch.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people who have the Switch plus another console, and they use both of them.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Whereas there's not a lot of reason to have both a PlayStation and an Xbox.
That's true. There's definitely less reason today, because you don't see nearly as many
exclusives.
Yeah, you don't see as many console exclusives. Even the things that used to be, other than the stuff from first-party developers, right? The Microsoft Studio stuff tends to be Xbox. The Sony Studio stuff tends to be PlayStation. But there's certainly a lot less reason to have both, unless you're a fan of both Forza and Gran Turismo, which I know there's no human being who is a fan of both, but theoretically,
right.
that is possibly the most divisive.
That's the only one I could think of.
The most divisive conversation in the industry. But yeah, that's about it, right? I'm 360. I am on the world's worst list of games. Yeah, this Microsoft Studios game list doesn't even have a PlayStation category. It has everything else. Wii U, Switch, but it doesn't even have a PlayStation category, which is pretty funny. So I guess that answers our question. There's not a whole lot of Microsoft stuff published on PlayStation, just like there's not a lot of Sony stuff published on Xbox. So there would be your exclusives. But yeah, but it's the third parties who really want this capability, who really want, if you play Street Fighter, wouldn't it be great to be able to play Street Fighter? But no. Walled gardens. So it looks like Sony might actually be interested in participating in this, which I think is good for the industry, especially as we're starting to see more games totally abandon the single player campaign and go entirely multiplayer. Fallout 76 as an example. This week's news from the tubes on F5 Live is proudly powered by Riff Tracks. Make fun of movies, or let the professionals do it for you, because that's what they get paid to do. The guys who used to do Mystery Science Theater 3000 are back and doing what they do best, making fun of movies. From blockbusters to Snow Beast, they've got a little bit of everything. The way it usually works is for a couple of dollars, you download the MP3, play it along with your DVD, Netflix, Amazon, wherever the movie happens to live, and laugh. From time to time, they do mix it up, and they do a live event in theaters nationwide. Their next event, August 23rd, is Krull, which should be wonderfully terrible. And of course, in addition to the live events and the full movies, they also have shorts, which are oftentimes industry films and the kind of garbage that your teachers would show you in elementary school when they had a headache. Though they make fun of those as well, and you can find all of the content that's available by going to f5live.tv/rifftracks with an X. I am very glad I got a laugh out of you on that.
Now isn't Krull the one where he has a fidget spinner that he throws at people?
Yep, sure is. It's also the movie that Peter Griffin wanted to go see when he went back in time to try and fix his marriage, which ended up with him married to I don't remember who now. Anyway. Yeah. Interesting. All right. So, important topic to talk about. Over the last couple of weeks, we have seen a lot of laws either passed, started to pass, or go into effect involving the internet. Obviously, the one that everybody on the planet is going to be familiar with because of the 1,800 emails that you received within a 48-hour time period, it's GDPR, and I apologize. I think we all never wanted to hear those 4 letters in that order again. But it certainly started this tailspin. And since GDPR, we have seen a privacy law passed in California. And we have also seen an interesting new law that has been bubbling around the EU since about 2013 get passed by, I think they call it the EU Parliament, but still has to go to the council or whatever it's called. That's massively complex. So let's talk a little bit about what we've got. GDPR, the biggest part of it requires that if you want your data removed from any platform, you can ask, and they have to remove it in a timely manner. The California data privacy law is complex, but specifically is a reaction to the Cambridge Analytica stuff, and is all about not giving third-party access and all the things that went wrong with Facebook in that particular topic. And then in the EU, the thing that went through Parliament is equally chaotic and complex, but the biggest challenge that that tech companies are seeing out of it, if it goes into effect, is that any basically links that are shared to content have required back payments, similar, you might remember, to what Spain tried to pass on news articles. Anytime a news article was syndicated in any way, the syndicator had to pay the original publisher. So if a news article showed up in a search result, Google had, or Microsoft would have to pay, the New York Times. Obviously not really, because it's in Spain, but think of it that way. If a New York Times article showed up in Google News, then Google had to pay the New York Times to run the headline, which is bizarre. This is a very similar thing, but if you share the link on Facebook, Facebook has to pay the New York Times, which is even more complex.
So who wants this law?
Mm-hmm.
Who's the constituency for the law? Because if I'm a publisher, actually I am.
Right.
I want people to link to me.
Uh-huh.
I want them to link to me, so disincentivizing the platform from allowing linking to me is the worst thing they could do to me.
Mm-hmm.
The result's not going to be that I'm going to suddenly get a flood of money coming in from people who want to link to me. They're just going to stop linking to me. So if I'm Facebook, the simplest solution is disable linking for users from that area. That's, if I'm Google, it's, turn off Google News for that area. It's not. And if I'm a publisher, and so here's an interesting question, right? So we run a US based website, right?
Sure.
Tom's Hardware. It's a US based website, but we have visitors from all over the world.
Absolutely.
Everybody does.
Absolutely.
So now, do we have to can we not link to anybody from our website because somebody from a European country might be visiting? Or do we have to stop our website from do we have to block those countries from viewing us?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have to come up with some type of a new technology that's going to turn those links off if they're going to disable all external links if someone is coming? And who exactly is getting what counts as something as someone who needs to get paid? If I link to a nonprofit, do they have to get paid for my linking to them?
Right.
If I link to a restaurant telling people to go there, do they have to get paid? Does Wikipedia get a cut if I link to that? Who's supposed to be getting paid, and how many people am I supposed to be paying? Am I paying them by the click, or am I paying them by the view?
Mm-hmm.
What if it's at the bottom of the page and people don't scroll all the way down and see it? I mean,
what if you're not the one that's sharing it? What if you're Twitter and somebody else is sharing it?
Yeah, well then I have to disable that on my platform.
Uh-huh. Right? Which is the whole concept behind things like Facebook and Twitter. So,
yeah.
So that's chaos. Now let's throw into the mix that the idea of a meme would officially be against the law in the EU.
So why? So you said a link.
Uh-huh.
They'd have to pay for a link. A meme is not a link.
Nope.
Why a meme?
So the link tax is just one of the many fascinating complexities in this new law, which, by the way, I got my terminology wrong. It passed committee and is now on to Parliament, not it passed Parliament and is now on to the whatever it's called at the top, the commission. So I'm a step off. But the whole law is about trying to prevent copyright infringement, and not really even prevent it, to make it impossible, because they want technologies in place to scan every piece of, every photo that's uploaded to Facebook to see if it contains some copyrighted work of art, which music, audio is hard enough. And that's consistent. But in this case, say you wanted to take a screenshot of an episode of Rick and Morty and put a caption at the bottom of it. Nope, can't do it, because you don't own the rights to that screenshot. In the United States, we call it fair use. In the EU, they call it no.
Well, they're going to have a problem. I mean, the funny thing is how much of the internet and how much of technology is based off of things that would be considered copyright violations.
Uh-huh.
I mean, for example, they're used. I mean, I guess it's not as big now, but like with all the streaming services, I mean, I used to see all these things where they would sell you, like you'd buy all these media streaming boxes and they had no way to connect to any service, and they'd have like, 3 terabyte hard drive. Well, what are you putting on that 3 terabyte hard drive? Home movies? Like so much of the internet, what's YouTube? YouTube is like a website copyright copyright violation.
Absolutely.
Yes, they have takedown stuff, but I challenge you to go there and search for any song you've ever wanted to hear, and you will find it 5 times.
Uh-huh.
Search for episodes of old TV shows, you will find them. Like,
uh-huh.
But
God forbid you live stream a drag performance and Sony takes your live stream down. That was my experience a couple weeks ago.
Really? I didn't.
Yeah.
Great.
Fascinating. But
wonderful.
But audio is music is way easier to detect than a drawing of Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, so on the safe side, they'll probably be doing all kinds of stuff to get people out. Like, I mean, every few years, but listen, let's not be too harsh to the EU, because these types of laws come up in the United States every year or so also.
Uh-huh, that's true.
Like, I don't know what country is the most enlightened about the internet, but we can't say it's the United States. Okay.
Sure.
Every few years there's some type of thing like SOPA or whatever that comes up that is designed by people who are either greedy or stupid or both, or just don't know, or just don't at this stage, ignorance of the internet is no excuse.
Right.
Okay. The World Wide Web has been a thing since at least 1995. So now you're talking 23 years. Even old people like my parents, well, not my father so much, but my mother, know how the internet works.
Right.
Okay. The people who are in these governments cannot all be 90 years old and have never used the internet.
Right.
So like you have to have used the internet, and so if you've used the internet at all, you know how ridiculous the idea of taxing links is.
Uh-huh.
You know how ridiculous the idea of trying to stop the free flow of information like this is, and so what you're trying to do is create a boon for lawyers, basically, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's just terrible. And, unfortunately, every few years we have to stand up for it. You have to stand up for it again.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of there's a lot of entrenched businesses that would like to go back to a pre-internet way of distributing information.
For sure.
That is also why net neutrality was killed in the United States, and we'll just start to see what happens there. But they want to go back to the gatekeeping model of the cable companies will get to decide what you can see and hear.
And this is, interestingly, everybody. Anyway, the net neutrality was the government trying to prevent corporations from making decisions on content, but this seems to be the EU going the other way and saying we're gonna codify you being in charge of what is seen, which is weird.
Yeah, they're not trying to assure your freedoms, they're trying to take them away. So, yeah, we can only hope that smarter people prevail.
But as stuff like this keeps showing up and keeps getting passed, California did their privacy thing. The GDPR is the law of the land as far as Europe is concerned. But that's not really the way the internet works. It's not like you and I can implement, because Tom's Hardware has a pretty active community, right? And if somebody in the EU were to contact you guys to remove all data that's ever been collected about one of your community members, where is all of that stuff? Is there anybody in the organization that necessarily knows all the places where data is stored?
We have to now.
Right.
We have to now. Our company had to go through some things to be GDPR compliant.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly what we had to do, but yes, our parent company Perch did a bunch of things to be GDPR compliant. Now, if I'm running a smaller company, I don't know what I need to do to be GDPR compliant. I mean, I guess it really depends on what type of data do we have on people.
Right. Is it identifiable? Yeah. But with GDPR, God forbid your company has implemented blockchain, because that's not undoable. That's an accounting system. Once something is in blockchain, it can't be removed. That's not how the technology is designed. So all of a sudden, blockchain is kind of against the law in Europe, which is where the problem here comes in. Is all of a sudden, in California, what you can and can't do online is different than Delaware, even in the United States. And so, as a startup, how do you prepare for all of that stuff? Do you totally ignore it, as I imagine a lot of startups have done, especially with GDPR? How do you have to have a legal team the size of Facebook to understand all of this stuff? What if you're a team of 3 that's trying to bootstrap a product? What if you're our friends at Ultimatum? There we go. What if you're our friends at Ultimatum, who are literally 3 people trying to bootstrap a startup? None of them are lawyers. How do you prepare for California versus Delaware? How do you deal with what if some?
I think you do. I think you do this California standard for everybody. Is probably what happens. Mm-hmm. But you still have to prepare for that. Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean,
luckily that doesn't go into effect until 2020, so you got a little bit of time on the California thing. But it's not. California won't be the last of these. This thing in the EU won't be the last of these.
I think I think as a startup, what you might want to do is find ways to work on a platform where other people control the user data.
Uh-huh.
It's not the best thing because then you don't own it per
Right.
se, but like, instead of creating your own discussion board, use a service. They should probably have ways to deal with that, right?
Have a public Slack or a public Discord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of, I mean, one of the nice things about if you were creating a game or something, I believe that like if it's on Android platform or iOS platform, Apple or Google will actually handle the user data for those, right? I mean, isn't that what like
Yeah, I think so.
Google Games or whatever? So theoretically, you don't have to. You could do a lot of development work without necessarily having your hands on user data. Nevertheless, there's probably a lot of original things people want to do and need to do to innovate to have their hands on user data. So it's an issue.
Absolutely. And I mean, when you end up with stuff like, the issue with GDPR causing all these problems with blockchain, all of a sudden a whole industry is almost useless on a continent. That kind of thing is not going to make innovation better. And in that case, for the EU, it's probably going to drive companies out of Europe and into Asia or North America. So I think that, that kind of thing ends up backfiring. It's complex for everybody all around. And I think that's important for everybody to know that this kind of stuff is happening and the kind of troubles that could arise because of it. This week's DRM, not included on F5 Live, is proudly powered by Amazon Prime. You know what your basic features of Amazon Prime. If you have it, you get free shipping on tons of products, sometimes same day, sometimes 2-day. But there's a lot more that comes with it, including Amazon Prime Music, where you get several million tracks available to stream for free. You get Amazon Prime Video with TV and movies, including original content. You get all kinds of stuff, including some of the HBO back catalog. You can subscribe to other channels like HBO for less than the traditional HBO Go price. But the thing that really gets me going right now is Twitch Prime. You now get 2 features with Twitch Prime. The first is you get 1 free subscription on Twitch, which you can use to help support a streamer that you enjoy, which could be us. You can go subscribe to PLUGHITZ Live on Twitch and get notified when we go live and help us out a little bit. But you can also get free games, which, just like if you're on Xbox or you're on PlayStation, not quite the same as PlayStation, just like if you're on Xbox Live, once it's yours, it's yours. So go get it. Own the games. Whether you play them today or you play them a year from now, go get them while they're free. They change every month. And if you're not already a subscriber to Amazon Prime, you can get a free 30-day trial to make sure that you like all of these features just in time for Prime Day 2018 by going to f5live.tv/prime. You can also get all of the features that we just talked about and quick links to all of them by going to that same link. Now, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. We'll talk about it again because the story just keeps moving on us. The Disney and Fox story. Disney, a number of weeks ago, put in a bid for $68 billion, I think, $62 billion to buy the majority of Fox's assets. Shortly after, while we were on our hiatus, Comcast came in and bid 68 billion, I think. So I think it was 60, 68, and then Disney just came back with 72 billion. 72.1, I think, was the number, as a counteroffer, which this week officially got government approval, kind of. So here's what happened. The Department of Justice filed a lawsuit to prevent the merger, which sounds like the opposite of approval, but it's not. The suit basically said that Disney would have to divest all of the regional sports networks that Fox currently owns. For those of us here in Florida, we have a Fox FS1 Florida or something like that. And there's regional sports networks all over the place. Basically, the DOJ is just saying we don't think all sports networks should be owned by Disney, because Disney also owns the ESPN collection of networks. So the competition between those two big brands is important. So Disney will not be allowed to bring in the Fox Sports networks into their corral. But other than that, the DOJ said good to go. Go ahead.
Will they be able to get the regular FS1 or just or that they can't have either?
So what I understand, they specified the what they called the RSNs, which is the regional sports networks. So Sun Sports here in Florida, which is a Fox Sports network. I don't know if the Prime network can or cannot transfer. The suit that I read specified the regional sports networks, but that doesn't mean that Fox Sports necessarily is or is not included in that. My guess is because of their reasoning behind preventing it, I would guess that the national network also cannot go. But what I read was specifically about the regional sports networks. So, but that is interesting on its own, that they've gotten this approval, that the only concern is the sports networks. On the other hand, Comcast might come back with another bid, because it seems that Comcast desperately wants Fox, but Fox desperately does not want to sell to Comcast, which I think is fascinating. Fox doesn't believe that there's any chance that the government would approve a merger the sale to Comcast. Why they feel that considering Disney got quick approval, I don't know. But Fox very much believes that Comcast would not be a success, and they are trying so hard not to sell to Comcast, which I think is fascinating.
Well, Comcast, I don't know how much. I mean, I guess Disney doesn't have any interest in cable providers, does it?
True. I don't think so.
So giving more content to the cable provider, which already owns NBC. So
the entire Universal suite.
Yeah. So I think that's where it might be problematic.
Yeah, that makes sense. Putting more stuff in conflict under Comcast versus under Disney, the only conflict would be the sports networks. That makes sense. Well, it's definitely interesting. It sure looks like Disney is about to hijack another collection of properties out from under the Universal parks. Because obviously Universal has Marvel Island at at Island of Adventure here at Universal Studios in Florida, and then Disney went and bought Marvel. And then they put in a couple of years ago the Simpsons ride at Universal, and Disney is about to own that here in pretty short order too. So sometimes it feels a little bit like Disney is trolling Universal, which I guess is Comcast. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, this takes away a little bit more competition from Disney. But at the same time, to the credit of Disney, Disney is one company that actually has done a very good job of onboarding other companies.
And letting them
see a lot,
letting them sink or swim on their own merit.
Yeah, and sometimes investing, right? So I'm sure there are people who will disagree with me, but I think that they've done a great job with Marvel Studios, and they've done a great job with Lucasfilm. They haven't tried to. People complain that those things would become Disney-fied. I don't think that they have changed really at all from what they were, except to have more resources to go and do what they do best. So, I don't
think
Disney is a good corporate parent.
Yeah, I don't think Infinity War would have been what it was if they hadn't had the resources of Disney to be able to pull it off.
I don't think they would have gotten to Infinity War.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, Marvel had problems, but I'm just saying,
for sure.
If someone else had bought them, look at Warner Brothers and how their inability to make a decent comic book movie besides Wonder Woman. Disney has obviously done a good job of supporting these properties. I'm sure that the other things that they buy will be. Yeah, I'm sure that the Fox properties will do well under them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can't see them trying to exert creative control over any of the Matt Groening projects or any of the Seth MacFarlane projects. Or, I can't see them wanting any creative control there any more than they've wanted any creative control in Marvel and Lucas. Just said, here, do your thing. Here's some money. Keep it going. Just don't suck.
The one group of people who should be concerned are the people who are making all the X-Men movies right now, because I could totally see that reverting to Marvel Studios where it really belongs.
Oh, I've been pretty sure all along that that's why Disney was interested in this buyout in the first place. Like, oh, you won't sell us the rights back to our own thing? Great, we'll just buy the company.
That's a lot of money to get the X-Men movies, which so far haven't been that great. But I mean, some of them have been okay.
But if you were to bring those characters under the same production team and quality as the rest of the MCU, they might be great with a reboot.
Yeah, you might make $1 billion or $2 billion, but they're spending $72 billion.
Yeah, exactly. So
the math doesn't add up. They must want the other stuff too.
Sure, but there could certainly be a little bit of spite in there too.
Yeah, but yes, I think that like Bryan Singer and all of those folks who are making the X-Men movies, they might be out of a job.
Yeah.
Or they might be asked to work with Marvel. I don't know, but they probably will be out of a job.
Well, considering the only part of the X-Men franchise that's ever really been a success is officially retired, the Wolverine is done.
It's on the downswing anyway.
Yeah. It's
on the downswing anyway.
It would be time for a recast, a refresh, and bring him into the MCU. It's a good time, just like Spider-Man. It was time for a recast, a refresh, and bring him into the MCU. So,
does Fox own Fantastic Four?
Yes. No. Yes. Fantastic Four, Silver Surfer, and X-Men are Fox. The only thing left at Sony is Spider-Man, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think obviously that one is a no-brainer.
Yeah, for sure. So that will likely be closed. I think we have a shareholder meeting coming up very soon for both companies, and I think that will put an end to this, and the ownership might be fully transferred before the end of the year, which would be fascinating. Disney is growing at an alarming rate, and considering 10 years ago under a different CEO, the struggles that they faced, it's impressive to see how much they've changed in just a short period of time. And that is our show. Thank you for those of you who have joined us live. You can do that. If you didn't join us live, that's okay. You can do that by going to f5live.tv/join us on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. If you didn't join us live and you have subscribed, that is great. You can do that by going to PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. And there you can see all of our shows, including F5 Live and The Pilch Point, First Looks, our special events feed, and a number of other series as well are all there to make it easy for you. It was great to be back. Avram and I obviously enjoy doing this, and having that much time off was weird for us because we like talking about this stuff. The good news is the 4th of July falls in the middle of the week this year, so we will not be taking a weekend off. So we will be back next week at the same time, same place, with a new episode, which will be great. This was, as I said at the beginning, this was episode 500. It has 11 years of doing this show to get to 500, and there have been a lot of changes for those of you who have followed along from the beginning. From a cast of 2 to a cast of 2 with a maximum, I think, of 6 in the middle somewhere. And obviously adding video and the new studio and all this stuff. It's been a really fun ride so far, and we're not going anywhere. So with that, on behalf of the staff that's not here, I'm Scott.
I'm Avram.
And we will see you guys back next week. Ciao.